Trump administration is hard at work attempting to reverse President Obama's efforts to increase fuel efficiency standards in the USA. And now we've actually got a better idea of how devastating their efforts could actually be in terms of energy used and money you're going to have to spend to fuel up your car. So what we're referring to happened last month. That was when EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt announced that the agency will abandon the long-term fuel economy standards developed by the Obama administration for 2022 to 2025, declaring without providing any evidence that they are too high, the costs. A coalition of 17 states and DC filed suit against the administration on Tuesday, charging that it acted arbitrarily and capriciously in jettisoning those requirements. Hold off 1 second on that. By the way, and we return to a lot of topics like this, the reason is this is one of the areas I was most worried about if Donald Trump got to be president, that he would be able to not only not take us further down the path we need to go on to modernize our energy production and consumption and transportation, but also make it that much more difficult for us to do anything about climate change. He's actually doing worse than that. He is reversing basically everything that Barack Obama did. And this is one of the areas where he wasn't perfect, but he did quite a bit of good, especially with the fuel efficiency standards. That was absolutely huge and difficult to do that with all the opposition from the auto lobby. But now they're being jettisoned. And so let's talk about how devastating that's gonna be. If you bring up this chart, a little bit complex, but what it's measuring, let's bring that up and I'll show them. Is increase in annual US oil demand from freezing those CAF standards. So instead of increasingly efficient cars, we are gonna have them to be blocked in where they are now. And so we're gonna need more and more fuel over time. Until finally in 2035, that's 881,000 barrels extra per day that we're going to be consuming simply because we won't be increasing our CAF standards. That is a gargantuan amount of fuel that we might be consuming. The reason that there's different ones is it depends on the price of oil and all of that. But if oil does not radically increase in price, we're gonna be using something like 1 million extra barrels every single day. Not because we're driving bigger cars or because we're driving faster or anything, simply because they chose to reverse these CAF standards.
Yeah, the CAF stands for corporate average fuel economy, and the idea that it's just about fuel economy. There's so many other things associated with this rollback besides just fuel economy, right? Mm-hmm. The kind of cars that pollute the environment, that discharge not only carbon, and so we're talking about a situation involving the whole globe and climate change, but even if you put that aside, and I don't think you can, but all right, we'll put it aside for a moment, the poisons generated that are discharged into the atmosphere create all kinds of other health issues for Americans, for the Americans like the people who buy cars and live here and that these corporations really only care about in the moment that they're purchasing fuel and automobiles. And one more word on that. When you look at cancer rates going up and you look at lung disease and cardio problems that Americans seem to be plagued by, they're related to the environment that we operate in. So this is all going to feed that. These poisons that are generated in the atmosphere that we all function in, they're going to have serious health effects as well as environmental effects of the sort that John's talking about.
There's the one continuing thing that always goes with these stories is the handouts and poor huge corporations. It's just too much. It's too much for them to bear. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we just had the tax cut bill where they went through and they said everyone needs, well, not everyone, these top of the top end corporations need these breaks because don't you feel sorry for them? And I don't know how we continue to allow this sympathy for a group that continues to pollute and do whatever they want and break any kind of rules and laws and change what our politicians say and think every 5 minutes. And then you still sit back and go, oh, well, of course they need it. And also, people that live near these things, talking about polluting the air and the health risks and stuff that Mark was talking about. There was a story, I wish I remembered who it was, but there was a CEO or the head of a company, and they said, oh, well, would you live next to your plants? He was like, hell no, you kidding me? You know, people die from this stuff. Once it becomes personal, they're like, why would, you know who I am? I'm rich. I don't live next to these places. I have flowers and trees because those things help me live. Mm-hmm. But when it's anyone else, it's, what are you worried about? You just some trickle down of some change I'm going to toss to you.
And to the point on your bailouts that you're referring, or you were talking about corporate welfare just now with the tax cuts and the like. There was a bailout of the auto industry. People seem to forget that in this conversation because it's conveniently forgettable since part of that bailout was and we're going to try to adhere to fuel standards and fuel efficiency standards in the decades ahead.
Yeah.
Now that's all gone, right? Now there's corporate welfare of the sort that you've talked about, which is associated with the tax legislation, and it's way in the rear view, the bailout of the auto industry. You know, too vital an industry for us to allow them to fail, and apparently too vital an industry for us not to allow them to just write whatever legislation they want through lobbyists in Washington.
If that isn't convincing enough, think about your pocketbook as well, because having to buy all of that extra fuel is going to, it's not like the companies are paying for that. You're gonna pay for that. So all of this extra cost is being taken off of Ford and Toyota and put onto you, and it's a lot. Purchasing that extra fuel is gonna cost between 193 to 236 billion additional dollars between now and 2035. And it will only go up from there if we don't get some sort of rational progressive president to put back into effect these CAF standards. That is a lot of money for you to have to pay on top of everything else.
2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below, then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.